What happens when the one person destined to love you declares you worthless in front of everyone who's ever scorned you? For Sarah Ashwood, the lowest-ranked Omega in the Silverpine pack, life had always been a careful dance of survival. She cleaned the packhouse floors, kept her eyes down, and endured the whispers that followed her like shadows. Her parents, high-ranking betas who should have defended her, instead treated her like a shameful secret, their gazes always sliding past her as if acknowledging her existence caused them physical pain. But Sarah had held on to one fragile hope: the mate bond, the moon goddess's sacred gift. When she turned 18, she'd felt it snap into place during the autumn ceremony, a golden thread connecting her soul to Darius Blackthorn, the pack's next alpha. For 3 heartbeats, she'd believed everything would change. But when Darius looked at her across the ceremonial fire, his storm-gray eyes cold as winter stone, and spoke the words of rejection loud enough for the entire pack to hear, everything shattered. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not the alpha who threw her away, not the parents who'd bound her power since birth, not the ancient prophecy that had been waiting for this exact moment of betrayal to finally awaken what they'd tried so desperately to suppress. The rejection ceremony happened on the first night of the harvest moon, when the entire Silverpine pack gathered in the central clearing. Their bodies pressed together in a sea of hierarchy and expectation. Alphas stood at the front, their dominance rolling off them in waves of cedar and smoke. Betas filled the middle ranks, solid and steady. And Omegas, like Sarah, huddled at the edges, their lavender and wildflower scents barely registering beneath the stronger wolves. Sarah had felt the bond humming in her chest all evening, a golden warmth that sang every time Darius moved. She'd kept to the shadows, terrified and hopeful in equal measure, waiting for him to acknowledge what connected them. The mate bond was sacred, unbreakable, chosen by the moon goddess herself. Surely he felt it too. Alpha Marcus Blackthorn stood before the ceremonial fire, his massive form commanding absolute attention. "Tonight, my son Darius will announce his chosen mate," he declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing, "the future Luna of Silverpine Pack." The scent of anticipation hung thick in the air, excitement, curiosity, and beneath it all, Sarah's quiet terror mixed with lavender hope. Darius stepped forward, 21 and magnificent, his dark hair catching firelight, his muscular frame radiating the kind of power that made even high-ranking wolves submit. The scent of forest and embers clung to him, mixed with something sharp like ozone and steel. Every unmated female in the pack watched him with hungry eyes. His gaze swept the crowd and landed on Sarah. For one perfect moment, their eyes met, and she felt the bond flare bright and desperate between them. Then his lip curled in disgust. "I, Darius Blackthorn, future alpha of Silverpine Pack, reject Sarah Ashwood as my mate." His voice cut through the clearing like a blade. "The moon goddess made an error. I will not bind myself to an Omega. I will not condemn my bloodline to weakness." Time stopped. The bond in Sarah's chest writhed, twisting from gold to black, and then it snapped. Pain exploded through her body, bones grinding, heart seizing, lungs collapsing. She crumpled to the ground as wolves around her stepped back, creating a circle of empty space as if her suffering might be contagious. "I accept your rejection," she gasped, because pack law required the words, required her to sever her own soul to complete the break. Speaking them felt like swallowing broken glass. The bond shattered completely. Sarah screamed, a raw animal sound that should have moved someone to mercy. It didn't. The pack watched in silence, some with pity, most with cold satisfaction. This was the natural order. Alphas didn't mate Omegas, the weak didn't rise. Through her blurred vision, she saw Darius turn to Leanna Frost, a stunning alpha-born female whose scent of cinnamon and iron filled the clearing. He took her hand, and the crowd erupted in approving howls. "Remove her," Alpha Marcus ordered, disgust dripping from every word. "She's disturbed the ceremony enough." Guards grabbed Sarah's arms, hauling her to her feet even as pain continued to tear through her body. She looked desperately toward her parents. Her mother Alara and father Thomas stood among the betas, their faces carefully blank. Mom, Sarah whispered, blood trickling from her nose as her body continued to reject the severed bond. Please. Her mother looked away. Her father's voice was cold, final. You are no daughter of ours. We should have drowned you when the seer warned us what you'd become. The words hit harder than the physical pain. Sarah stopped, fighting as the guards dragged her through the crowd, past sneering faces and triumphant eyes, past Darius, who didn't even glance her direction as he kissed his new chosen mate. They threw her beyond the pack borders into the stretch of wilderness that separated Silverpine territory from the uninhabited northern lands. It was late October, and the first true cold had arrived. Sarah hit the frozen ground hard, her body still convulsing from bond sickness. If you come back, you'll be killed as a rogue, one guard said, not unkindly. He'd always been decent to her. I'm sorry, Sarah, but that's Alpha's law. Then they were gone, and she was alone in the darkness with nothing but the clothes on her back and a body that was eating itself from the inside out. Sarah crawled. She didn't know where she was going, only that staying still meant death. The temperature was dropping fast, her breath forming clouds in the air, her fingers already going numb. The scent of pine and coming snow filled her nose, so different from the pack's familiar territory. Time became meaningless. Minutes or hours could have passed. Her wolf, usually a quiet presence in the back of her mind, was completely silent. Maybe the rejection had killed that part of her too. When she found the abandoned barn, half collapsed and probably used by rogues in warmer months, it felt like a miracle she didn't deserve. Sarah dragged herself inside, curled into the driest corner she could find, and let the shivers take her. This is it, she thought distantly. This is how I die. The pain had dulled to a constant ache. Her heartbeat was slowing. The scent of decay and old hay surrounded her, and beneath it all, the sweet smell of her own blood where she'd bitten through her lip. She closed her eyes and waited for darkness. But darkness didn't come alone. Sarah became aware of warmth first. Impossible warmth surrounding her, pressing against her from all sides. Then breathing, steady, powerful, the rhythm of multiple lungs filling and emptying in synchronized peace. Her eyes fluttered open to shadows and moonlight streaming through the barn's broken roof. And wolves. Massive wolves, circling her in a protective formation, their bodies creating a living barrier against the killing cold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sarah's hazy mind counted them as her vision slowly focused. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 wolves, each one larger than any alpha she'd ever seen, their fur ranging from midnight black to silver white, their eyes glowing with intelligence that went beyond animal instinct. They didn't smell like pack wolves. Their scents were ancient, aged oak and winter snow, storm winds and mountain stone, deep earth and star-touched sky. The closest wolf, massive and black with silver-touched ears, lowered his head until his muzzle nearly touched her face. His scent washed over her, aged oak, winter snow, pine, and the sharp, clean smell of an approaching storm, power. Radiated from him in waves that should have made her submit, but instead felt like coming home. You're alive, he said, and Sarah's mind fractured because wolves didn't speak. Wolves couldn't speak, except he shifted. Bones flowed like water, fur receding, form expanding and reshaping until a man crouched where the wolf had been. He was older than Darius, maybe 30, with scars crossing his muscular chest and arms, silver streaking his black hair. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, ancient and knowing. We've been waiting for you, he said, his voice rough as winter wind. For 20 years we've been waiting. The other wolves shifted too, a symphony of transformation, until 10 warriors surrounded her, men and women, all scarred, all powerful, all watching her with expressions of reverence that made no sense. I don't understand, Sarah whispered, her voice barely functioning. Who are you? The scarred man smiled, and it transformed his hard face into something gentle. My name is Kale Stormborn. We are the Unchained, the last of the moon goddess's personal guard. And you, Sarah Ashwood, are the reason we've remained hidden all these years. A woman stepped forward, her white blonde hair braided with silver thread, her scent like starlight and snow. The prophecy said you'd come to us broken, she said softly, that you'd bleed for a wolf cub who didn't deserve you, and that your rejection would be the key that unlocked what your parents tried to bury. What are you talking about? Sarah tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't cooperate. What prophecy? What did my parents bury? Kyle's expression darkened. Your power. They bound it when you were an infant, terrified of what you'd become. But magical bindings require anchor points, and they chose the cruelest one, your mate bond. When Darius rejected you, when that bond shattered, the binding broke with it, finished another guard, a stocky man with red hair and scars across his throat. His scent was deep earth and copper. You're free now. Or you will be, once your body finishes processing the change. Sarah's mind reeled. Change? What change? I'm just an Omega. I'm nothing. You, Kyle interrupted gently but firmly, are the matriarch reborn, the moon goddess's chosen queen. And you are everything they feared you'd become. The barn fell silent except for the sound of wind through broken boards. Sarah stared at these impossible warriors, these mythic beings who claimed to have been waiting for her, and felt hysteria bubbling in her chest. That's insane, she breathed. I can't even shift properly. My wolf is silent. I'm the weakest. Your wolf isn't silent, the white-haired woman said. She's waking up. And when she does, every wolf in 100 miles will know what you truly are. As if summoned by the words, something stirred deep in Sarah's chest. Not the quiet, timid presence she'd always known, but something vast and ancient and utterly terrifying in its magnitude. Hello, little one, a voice purred in her mind, feminine and powerful and absolutely foreign. I've been sleeping for so long. Thank you for finally setting me free. Sarah gasped, and the Unchained stepped back as power began to radiate from her body in visible waves, lavender light mixed with silver that made the shadows dance. It's happening, Kyle said, awe coloring his voice. The awakening. Everyone, give her space. What's happening to me? Sarah cried as heat began building in her bones, as energy coursed through her veins like liquid starlight. Kyle knelt at the edge of the growing circle of power. Your true form is emerging. Don't fight it. Let your wolf rise. The presence in her mind grew stronger, warmer, filling spaces Sarah hadn't known were empty. We are one, the voice said. I am you. You are me. We are what we were always meant to be. But I don't know how. Yes, you do. You've always known. They just made you. Forget. And then the transformation began. It didn't hurt the way shifting was supposed to hurt. No bones breaking, no violent restructuring. Instead, Sarah felt her body flowing like water, taking a new shape, felt power unlocking in her cells, felt magic that had been compressed for 18 years, finally expanding to fill the space it required. Fur emerged across her skin, not the mousy brown she'd expected, but pure silver that shimmered like moonlight. Her bones elongated, restructured, grew denser and stronger. Her senses exploded outward. She could smell every individual wolf, could hear heartbeats and breathing and the rustle of a mouse in the walls, could taste the night air and know exactly how many hours until dawn. The barn suddenly felt too small. Sarah's expanding form pushed against the walls, her head breaking through old boards as she grew larger than any wolf she'd ever seen. Energy erupted from her in waves, blowing out the barn's remaining walls in a shower of splinters and dust. When the transformation finally completed, Sarah stood in the ruins on 4 massive paws, her silver fur glowing with inner light, her eyes, she could somehow see them reflected in a puddle of melted snow, burning with lavender fire. The Unchained had dropped to their knees, heads bowed. Oh, Sarah's wolf said with satisfaction, this is what we were supposed to be. Sarah's first howl shook the forest, sent birds exploding from trees, made the very earth tremble. It was a sound of grief and rage and awakening power, of everything stolen and everything reclaimed. It echoed for miles, a declaration that something ancient and terrible and magnificent had returned to the world. When silence fell again, Kyle was the first to speak, his voice thick with emotion. Matriarch, he said, we are yours to command. We have been yours since the day we took our oaths. We will follow you into darkness, into war, into the end of all things. You are what the prophecy promised. You are the matriarch reborn. The white-haired woman raised her head, tears streaming down her face. When the rejected bleeds beneath a harvest moon, when the forsaken rises from death's door, when the bound one breaks her chains, the matriarch will return. She will be silver and starlight. She will be mercy and vengeance. She will come when the packs have forgotten what true power means, and she will remind them. Sarah's wolf settled, the initial rush of transformation fading to a steady hum of power. She looked down at the warriors kneeling before her, these scarred, ancient, powerful beings who called her matriarch, who claimed to have waited 20 years for this moment. "They're ours," her wolf said with certainty. "Our pack, our family, our unchained." Slowly, testing her new form, Sarah shifted back to human. The transformation was effortless this time, her body remembering the flow of change, settling into skin that felt different, now stronger, more real, as if she'd been living in a shadow of herself and had finally stepped into the sun. She was naked, but one of the female guards immediately draped a cloak around her shoulders. The woman had kind eyes and smelled like summer storms. "I'm Maya," she said softly. "I can teach you control if you'll let me." Sarah pulled the cloak tighter, still shaking from what had just happened. "I don't understand any of this. The prophecy, the binding, why my parents would—" Her voice broke. "Why would they do this to me?" Kyle rose to his feet, his expression grim. "Come. You need food and rest, and we have much to explain. Our camp is a mile north, hidden by ancient wards. You're safe there. You're safe with us." The camp was nothing like the Silver Pine pack house, where her old home had been all rigid hierarchy and cold stone. The unchained settlement was warm chaos, tents arranged in a circle around a central fire, weapons and training equipment scattered. Between them, the scent of cooking meat and herb tea filling the air. They sat her by the fire, wrapped in furs, and fed her hot stew that tasted better than anything she'd eaten in years. The unchained gathered around, 10 faces illuminated by firelight, 10 warriors who looked at her like she mattered. Kyle settled across from her, his storm-gray eyes reflecting flames. "Your parents," he began, "were visited by a seer when you were 3 days old. She told them what you were, that you carried the matriarch's soul, that you would grow to become the most powerful wolf in generations, that you would reshape the pack structure itself." "And they were terrified," Maya continued, her hand warm on Sarah's shoulder. "Your mother was ambitious. She'd clawed her way up from Omega to Beta through politics and manipulation. The idea that her daughter would upend everything she'd built, that you might challenge the very hierarchy she'd used to gain power, she couldn't accept it." The red-haired guard, whose name was Finn, leaned forward. "So they found a witch, a dark practitioner who could bind power in exchange for a terrible price. She wove the binding into your infant soul, anchored it to your mate bond. As long as that bond remained intact, your power would stay locked away. You'd live as a weak Omega, never knowing what you truly were." "But they miscalculated," said another guard, a lean woman with scars across her face and the scent of winter wind. "They assumed you'd mate young, mate willingly, that the bond would remain unbroken. They never imagined an alpha would be stupid enough to reject you." Sarah's hands trembled around her teacup. "So when he rejected you," Cale said, his voice hard with controlled rage, "he shattered the very anchor holding your power in place. The binding couldn't survive the bond breaking, and your wolf, who'd been sleeping for 18 years, finally woke up." Fury burned through Sarah's chest, hot and bright, and clean. "They did this to me, my own parents. They looked me in the eye every day and let me suffer, let me be treated like garbage, and they knew. They knew what I was supposed to be." "Yes," Kyle said simply, "and they'll answer for it. But not tonight. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we begin your training." "Training for what?" His smile was sharp as broken glass. "Training to be what you were born to be, a queen, a warrior, the wolf that makes alphas kneel." The days that followed blurred together in a haze of transformation and discovery. Sarah learned to shift at will, her body flowing between forms with increasing ease. Maya taught her to sense emotions through scent, to read the subtle chemical changes that indicated fear, arousal, anger, joy. Finn showed her how to channel her power into her voice, how a single command from the matriarch could make even the strongest wolf submit. But it was Kale who spent the most time with her, teaching her to fight, to lead, to see herself as something other than the rejected Omega she'd been raised to be. Again, he said, circling her in the training ring while the other Unchained watched. You're still thinking like prey. Alphas are predators, yes, but you're something beyond that. You're the apex. Act like it. Sarah lunged, faster than she'd thought possible, and this time when Kale blocked, she was ready. She twisted, used his momentum against him, and had him pinned to the ground in 3 moves. The Unchained erupted in cheers. Kyle grinned up at her, pride shining in his eyes. There she is. There's our matriarch. Something warm unfurled in Sarah's chest, something that had nothing to do with her wolf and everything to do with the way Kale looked at her, not with desire or dominance, but with respect, with partnership. He would be a good mate, her wolf said thoughtfully. Not chosen by the goddess, but chosen by us. That matters more. Sarah's cheeks heated as she helped Kale to his feet. I don't know about matriarch, she said. I can barely control my shift sometimes. You've had 3 weeks, Maya pointed out. Most wolves train their entire lives and never achieve what you're doing. Your instincts are flawless. Your power is growing every day. And more importantly, she gestured to the gathered Unchained, you've made us a family again. We've been soldiers for 20 years, waiting for a purpose. You gave us one. It was true. The Unchained had become her pack, her family in ways Silverpine never had. She knew their stories now. How Kale had been alpha of his own pack before taking the oath, how Maya had walked away from a mate who tried to cage her, how each of them had given up everything to serve a prophecy they'd only half believed until the night they found her dying in that barn. They trained together, ate together, laughed together. Finn taught her card games. A quiet guard named Ash showed her how to read tracks. The twins, River and Stone, competed to make her smile with increasingly ridiculous jokes. And Kale. Kale was her anchor. When her power felt too big, when the weight of expectation crushed down, he was there with steady hands and steadier words. You don't have to be perfect, he told her one night when she'd broken down after accidentally sending a wave of compulsion through the entire camp. You just have to be you. The matriarch we need isn't some flawless goddess. She's a woman who survived the unsurvivable, who chose to rise instead of breaking. That's you, Sarah. That's always been you. She kissed him then, standing in the moonlight with her power humming between them, and he kissed her back like she was precious, like she was chosen, like she was exactly what he'd been waiting for. Better, her wolf purred. So much better than that alpha pup who threw us away. The scout found them on the first day of winter. A young wolf, barely more than a teenager, who'd been tracking rogue scents and stumbled across their hidden camp. He took one look at Sarah, at her silver fur and glowing eyes, and ran. He'll report back to his pack, Kyle said grimly, watching the boy disappear into the trees. We should move camp. No, Sarah said, and her voice carried command that made every Unchained straighten. Let him report. Let them come. It's time they knew what they created when they threw me away. The Silverpine pack arrived 3 days later with 20 wolves, all in fighting formation. Alpha Marcus led them, with Darius at his right hand and Lyanna at his left. They stopped at the edge of the Unchained's territory, their combined scents: forest, embers, steel, cinnamon, iron, sharp with aggression and anticipation. Sarah walked out to meet them alone, wearing simple leather armor, her silver hair unbound, her lavender and wildflower scent mixing with something new, starlight and ancient power. Marcus's eyes widened, then narrowed. Sarah Ashwood, you were exiled. Coming back means death. Does it? Sarah tilted her head. I'm not on your territory, Alpha. This land belongs to no pack, and I'm no longer the weak Omega you threw away. Darius stepped forward, his expression twisted with confusion, and something that might have been regret. What happened to you? You smell different. You feel different. The bond is gone, but you can sense what I am now, Sarah finished. What I was always supposed to be, what my parents and your father conspired to suppress. Lyanna snarled, her cinnamon and iron scent spiking with aggression. She's trying to trick you. She's still just an Omega playing dress-up. am I? Sarah smiled and let just a fraction of her power slip free. The air around her shimmered with lavender light. Every wolf in the Silverpine formation took a step back, their instincts screaming at them to submit. "Why don't you come here and find out, Luna?" Leanna's eyes flashed with rage and pride. She shifted mid-leap, her russet wolf form massive and beautiful, jaws open, claws extended. Sarah didn't shift. She simply caught Leanna mid-air with one hand wrapped around her throat, her human strength enhanced by power that made the alpha female look like a pup. Time stopped. Leanna struggled, whimpering, as Sarah held her suspended above the ground with effortless ease. The scent of Leanna's fear filled the clearing, sharp, acrid, undeniable. "You wanted to see if I was still just an Omega," Sarah said conversationally. "I hope this answers your question." She tossed Leanna aside like she weighed nothing. The she-wolf hit the ground hard, shifted back to human, and stayed down, her eyes wide with shock and terror. Marcus's growl rumbled through the clearing. "How is this possible? We broke your bond. We exiled you. You should be dead." "But I'm not." Sarah's voice carried across the space between them, and behind her, the Unchained emerged from the shadows, all 10 of them shifting into forms that made the Silverpine wolves gasp. They weren't normal wolves. They were dire wolves, ancient, massive, each one half again as large as any alpha, their eyes glowing with otherworldly light. Kyle's black form was the largest, his silver-touched fur rippling with power as he took his place at Sarah's right hand. "You made a mistake, Alpha Marcus," Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy and power. "You didn't just reject a weak Omega, you rejected the matriarch reborn. You threw away the one wolf who could have brought honor to your pack, and in doing so, you've broken pack law, violated the moon goddess's will, and earned judgment." Marcus shifted, his brown wolf form bristling with desperate aggression. "I am Alpha. I bow to no one." "Then you'll kneel instead," Sarah said, and let her power wash over the clearing in a wave that brought every Silverpine wolf to their knees, their heads forced down by the sheer weight of her dominance. Every wolf except Darius. He stood trembling, fighting against the compulsion with every ounce of alpha strength he possessed, his eyes locked on Sarah with an expression of horror and dawning understanding. "You feel it now, don't you?" Sarah walked toward him slowly. "The bond that should have been. The mate you destroyed. I'm not asking you to suffer, Darius, but I am asking you to kneel, to acknowledge what you threw away, to submit to judgment." "Sarah," he whispered, and there were tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know, I didn't understand." "No, you didn't, but you will." His knees hit the ground. Sarah stood before the kneeling Alpha, before the pack that had scorned her, and felt her wolf satisfaction humming through every cell. This was justice. This was balance restored. "I could kill you all," she said quietly. "Pack law gives me that right. You exiled me. You left me to die. But the matriarch doesn't rule through fear alone. She rules through wisdom." She gestured, and the compulsion released. The Silverpine wolves gasped as they were freed, but none of them moved to attack. They'd felt her power. They knew what she could do. "Marcus Blackthorn, you are stripped of your alpha title. Your son will lead now, and he will do better. Darius," she met his eyes, "you will establish new laws. Omegas will be protected, valued, given rights. Hierarchy based on cruelty ends today. Fail, and I will return. Succeed, and perhaps you'll become the alpha you were meant to be." "And my parents?" Sarah's voice hardened. "Bring them forward." Alara and Thomas were pushed to the front of the group, their faces pale with terror. They could smell what she'd become, could see the power radiating from her form. "You bound your own daughter," Sarah said, letting her disgust show. "You watched me suffer for 18 years rather than admit what you'd done. Speak. Confess before your pack what you paid a witch to do to an infant." Her mother's voice broke. "We were afraid. The seer said you'd destroy everything, that you'd upend the natural order. We thought we were protecting the pack." "You were protecting yourselves," Sarah corrected, "and now you'll spend the rest of your lives atoning. You're banished from Silverpine. You'll go to the Eastern Territories and work with the healers there, helping refugees, protecting the vulnerable. Every Omega you save, every weak wolf you defend, maybe then the moon goddess will forgive you. I won't." She turned her back on them, on all of them, and walked toward Kyle. He shifted to human, pulling her against his chest, and she let herself take comfort in his steady heartbeat, his aged oak and winter snow scent. "Is it done?" he asked softly. "It's done." Sarah faced the Silverpine pack one last time, her voice carrying command and certainty. "I am Sarah Ashwood, the matriarch reborn. These lands are mine, these forests are mine. The unchained are my pack, and we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. We will hunt those who prey on the weak. And we will remind the wolf packs what honor truly means. Spread the word. The matriarch has returned." The Silverpine wolves bowed, not from compulsion this time, but from genuine submission, genuine respect. Even Darius, even Lyanna, even Marcus's defeated form. Then they were gone, disappearing into the forest, leaving Sarah with her chosen family and her chosen mate, and the future she'd claimed from the ashes of her past. And so, Sarah Ashwood's journey from rejected Omega to matriarch reborn reached its first chapter's end. She'd been broken, yes, shattered by betrayal, by abandonment, by the cruelty of those who should have loved her. But she'd refused to stay broken. She'd risen from death's door, unlocked the power that was always hers, and claimed her place as something the wolf packs had forgotten could exist. A queen not crowned by birth or politics, but by the sheer force of her refusal to be diminished. The lessons were written in her scars, in her transformation, in the family she'd built from warriors who'd believed in a prophecy. Power isn't given, it's claimed. Family isn't blood, it's chosen. And sometimes the ones who throw you away end up kneeling at your feet, finally understanding exactly what they lost. But Sarah's story was far from over. The blood moon was coming. Ancient texts whispered of a darkness rising in the eastern territories, and the matriarch had enemies she didn't even know existed yet. Forces that had been waiting, just like the Unchained, for her return. What would you have done in Sarah's position? Would you have shown mercy, or would vengeance have tasted sweeter? How do you rise from your own rejections, your own moments of being thrown away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your stories of resilience and transformation. If you enjoyed this chapter, please like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, when the blood moon rises and ancient enemies emerge, Sarah's going to need every ounce of her newfound power. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next chapter of The Matriarch's Rise.